Yo, what is up YouTube? Mr. Gruesome here, back for another video, and in this video it's going to be different, as I'm doing a new series on the channel called Morbid Month, where at the end of every month, I take all of the scary videos I've done of that month, and I compile them into one video, so that if you haven't seen all of them, you can be caught up. And this video is Morbid Month, July 2018, and the next video will be August 2018, so Morbid Month, August 2018, and that will be at the end of August, and this one's at the end of July. So yeah, I'll stop talking and I'll let you guys enjoy Morbid Month, July 2018. When I was about 10 years old, I was out shopping with my mom, and I had to go to the bathroom. When I walked in, it smelled absolutely putrid, but I really had to go. When I opened the door to the first stall, there was liquid shit absolutely everywhere. On the toilet, on the floor, on the walls. So I went to the next stall, and it also had shit everywhere. Keep in mind, neither toilet had been tainted, but every other surface was wrecked. It was like someone had intentionally missed the toilet with a shit hose. After going through 4 other wrecked stalls, I finally found a clean one. But after I came out, I came upon a woman who was completely pantless with shit running down her legs. I had no idea what to do. She was coming at me and was about to touch me for whatever reason. And whatever the case, I've never fled a bathroom so quickly in all my life. As an adult, I feel bad for her, but as a child, all I was thinking about was getting away from this pantless lady covered head to toe in shit. Before the video ends real quick, I just wanted to say sorry for the really short video today. It's because I'm going on vacation with my family and I didn't have a lot of time. And also sorry for no upload yesterday. It's because of family matters. And also, the videos later this week, they're going to be scheduled uploaded, so you don't have to worry about that. And also, go subscribe to my gaming channel, Storm42K. Link will be down in the description. And yeah, I guess I will see you guys in my next video. Peace. My name is Adam, and it's always been the 4 of us. What I mean is that it's always been me and my 3 other friends, Michael, Sam, and Derek. We have always done everything together. We would go to each other's houses all the time. And when we were old enough, we played video games together. Call of Duty, GTA 5, you name it. And when Fortnite came out, of course we downloaded it, and we started playing that right away. We played Fortnite all the way up until mid-season 4, and then that day happened. That goddamn day. It started out as a normal one. I woke up, ate breakfast, and then got on Fortnite. My friends were already on, so we hopped on squads. The first few games were pretty easy, and we got a couple of dubs, but then the game after that was different. What I mean is that when we were waiting on Spawn Island, everybody else except us was default skin. This really confused us, but we thought it was just some kind of glitch or some kind of bug, and so we just kept playing. We dropped retail, and surprisingly, nobody else was there. After we looted retail, we were about to head to the circle when I saw another player. They were a default skin, of course. I shot at them with my AR, but they started to build, so I built too. And they shot at me with their AR, and they hit me, and I took some damage. Then, I felt the pain. I didn't know where it came from, but it hurt really bad, like a burning and stinging sensation. Then, Michael came in and sniped the default skin. And then, the pain went away. My friends said on their mics, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah," and we just kept playing. Then, out of nowhere, Sam said, "What the fuck? Look at how many people are left alive." I looked, and it said 99. This really confused us, but then, out of nowhere, dozens upon dozens of default skins just appeared. We were baffled, but then my friends and I started to build. And then the default skins all started to shoot at us. We didn't stand a chance. My friends all died from the thousands upon thousands of bullets that were being shot. I took a lot of damage, and I had 5 health left. During that whole ordeal, I was in immense pain. But after I closed Fortnite, the pain went away. I talked into the mic and said, "That was fucking crazy," but none of my friends responded. I thought they just got off, so I turned off my Xbox and tried to figure out what that immense pain was. I tried texting my friends, but no answer. I tried calling, but again, no answer. I went over to each of their houses, and that's when I found out that all of my friends suddenly died. I didn't know how to cope with all of it, and I was in shock for days. That's when I realized that it was that fucking game of Fortnite. But now, I'm just depressed all of the time. I can't live without my friends, so I think I'm just gonna end it all and blow my brains out. This is my story of dealing with a creeper at a party. In 2012, I was invited to go to my 2 friends who were sisters to their family 4th of July party. It was a lot of fun. There was eating, swimming, playing, and then fireworks. So the next year, which is when this took place, I went with him again. For some quick background on the creeper, he is 3 years older than me and has been arrested for sexual assault on a minor before I met him, and he was still under house arrest. It started when I was sitting in the kitchen alone. I was sitting by the snacks, a place where there are 5 chairs. I had my legs stretched out covering 3 of the chairs when he came over. We made eye contact, so I said hi, and he said hi back. He touched my legs like a pat, and I thought he meant for me to move my legs so he could sit. At the time, my gut was telling me to get off my lazy butt and go back outside because there were people there. I was too lazy though and didn't move. I was on my iPod just looking through Tumblr when I heard him say something. The only word that I caught from the whole thing was cute. I had to ask him 3 more times to hear it fully, which turned out to be him saying I was cute. I didn't know what to do, so I smiled and said thank you. He knew I was 16 because he had asked earlier and I gave no thought to it. He asked if I had a boyfriend and I didn't think and I said no. He kept saying how cute and good looking I was. I kept saying thanks and finally he got up and left. What I should have done was get up and go outside to where the people were. I was just too lazy to get up and move. I also thought that was the end of it. Nope. He came back in a few minutes asking for my phone number. I got scared because he had his phone out, and I thought he was going to text or call once I gave him my number. I also thought if I said no, he would get me in trouble, so I gave it to him. The first text was at 8:09 saying, "Hey there, beautiful." I answered because, again, I thought I would get in trouble if someone found out what was going on. After a few more texts like that, he sent, "You want to go somewhere?" This is when I really freaked out and told one of the sisters what was going on. She freaked out too and told me to stay with her. I did, but that didn't help. He wouldn't take my no, so I had to come up with excuses. He said for me to ditch hanging out with her. What got worse was whenever we were inside, he would rub up against me, motion for me to follow, and make kissy lips at me. In a crowded room, no one saw any of this. He even waited by the bathroom line because he saw me in it, so when I was going out, I ran. By the time fireworks were happening, he caught me alone in a room and forcefully kissed me, as well as touched my butt and boob. I kept saying I had to go, and when I tried to leave the room, the door wouldn't open. When that was finally open, he started to kiss me again. The only thing that saved me was my friend calling my name, to which I was able to yell at her. After that, he kept trying to get me to go with him. Anytime he got a chance to get close to me, he would say something. He even followed me to the car when I was leaving, which my friend almost started to yell at him. He continued to text me saying how at the next party, 3 days later after that day, stuff was going to happen 3 times. Lucky for me, at the next party, people found out, so he wasn't allowed to go. I haven't heard from him since, most likely because the family made sure my number was out of his phone, to which I am forever grateful. I can feel it, the pervasive, crawling itch, the kind of itch that everyone gets from time to time, the kind of itch that causes an instinctive scratch with no conscious thought driving the motion. Pure reflex, a dig with the fingernails and the itch is relieved, and looking at the spot after scratching shows nothing, unblemished skin, and slowly developing red streaks where the nails have been dragged. I don't scratch. I don't scratch because last week I looked at an itch just before scratching. I looked and I saw something small, something black, something with legs and hairs and pincers and mandibles, and I couldn't stop the reflex. I couldn't stop my hand reaching for my leg. I couldn't stop my nails digging in, and I couldn't stop that thing from climbing in through my damaged skin, from disappearing into my flesh. I can feel the itch again. I can feel it, and this time it's different. This time the itch is coming from the inside. Before the video ends real quick, I just wanted to say that right now this is going to be scheduled uploaded on Friday, and I should be getting home on Friday, and I will try to have uploaded on the weekend. And yeah, I'm just gonna try and upload videos during the weekend when I get home on Friday. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I guess I will see you guys in my next video. Peace. I spent a week in New York City with some close friends. We head over to Times Square, see the sights and whatnot, then decide to check out a mall we spotted. Surprisingly, this mall was nothing special. I expected everything in New York to be top-notch, but this mall turned out to be just as shitty as any other mall. Several of the stores were closed and it looked like the whole place was under renovation. Anyway, I needed to head to the restroom because I had the itchiest asshole that entire trip and had to make periodic trips to alleviate myself. I head over to the can by my lonesome and plan to meet up with the others later. Right when I get into a stall, I hear a very angry man shouting and slamming the doors on the other stalls. He's screaming shit like, "Where are you?" and making a big ruckus, then stops at my stall. So many thoughts ran through my head. What do I do? Is he armed? Does he have a disease? Could I take this guy? Thankfully, I heard a loud, booming voice say, "You better step away from that stall. That guy in there is gonna mess you up." It was an NYPD officer. I have never been so happy to see a police officer. I hurried back to all my friends and retell the story, but one of them starts to mock me. "Ha, Potato almost just got raped." Just then, the NYPD dragged the fucking pervert through the mall, and my friends caught a glimpse. I've been told the look on my face was priceless, and they immediately reassured me that I could have taken him if it came to that. In the words of my friend, "When I saw the look on your face, I knew you'd seen enough of New York." Well, I went to Germany for a work trip. I put it in quotes because it was company affiliated, but it was for a fun competition between several teams around Europe and the US. Our first night there, I went out with a buddy of mine, hitting a few small bars after dinner. I had a few beers, but was pretty sober, and I was taking care of my friend who was pretty drunk. At the last bar, we each ordered a beer, and halfway through it, I suddenly felt drunk, from sober to drunk in half a beer. My mind must have already been fucked because I basically ignored it, and I let my friend walk off back to the hotel by himself when he told me he wanted to leave. In any ordinary situation, I would have gladly went back with him then. The next thing I know, I'm walking up on the sidewalk outside somewhere, with my wallet over €100 in it and my cell phone gone. Pieces of what happened started to come back to me, and I see flashes of being held down on the ground by 3 or 4 people while they were taking my money. I am pretty certain that the bartenders are responsible for drugging and robbing me. Afterward, I remember finding a police station and trying to explain to them what happened, but they treated me like a drunken asshole, told me to fuck off, and literally pushed me out of the police station. I finally stumbled my way back to my hotel. I have no idea how I made it and found it, and I was in a very paranoid state the whole time. I eventually hit my bed and passed out for about 20 hours. Let me start this off by saying that there is something horrifying in the playground LTM of Fortnite. I'm writing this to explain my experience with the playground mode. When I first heard the playground LTM was coming to Fortnite, I was excited. I couldn't wait to play that new mode. The first time Epic released it, they took it off, but the second time, I jumped at the chance to play it right away. I loaded up a match and I was then in the battle bus. I jumped out and I decided to land Dusty Divot. It was weird to see that it was only me on the entire island. Once I landed, I started harvesting for materials so I could practice my building, when all of a sudden I heard something. It sounded like laughter from a little kid. This freaked me out, but I just ignored it and went back to getting materials. After I got my materials, I found a common tactical and a green pump. I got a pop rock and I was about to leave Dusty when, again, I heard the laughter. It was still like a child laughing. I then turned around and I saw a default skin. Now I knew something was definitely wrong, because I was the only one in the entire match. I thought they were a hacker, but then the default skin started to run towards me. I pulled out my green pump and I got a direct headshot, but it didn't do any damage at all. Then the default skin ran up to my character and we were now face to face. Then, in a voice I can't even describe, it said, After that, my PS4 turned off and my TV also turned off. I didn't know what to think of it, and I still don't know what to think of it. So, I'm writing this as a warning to any player that goes into playground mode to be careful of whoever or whatever you encounter. Let me preface this by saying that this story happened when I was a lot younger and less worldly wise about the creeps of the world. Had I known then what I know now, this story would have ended before it began. This story begins when I, a 16-year-old girl, got bored one day and decided to download a version of the Tinder app. After a couple of swipes, a guy's face popped up, and what intrigued me most was that he did not have his name in his profile. Think M. Spark instead of Mark. Now, he didn't seem like a rapper, so I swiped right out of curiosity. We matched straight away and began talking just run-of-the-mill conversation. What do you do for fun? Been to any parties recently? That kind of thing. After a bit of digging, it emerged that he went to the school at the bottom of my road, so we arranged to meet that weekend. At this point, I didn't even have his name, but felt too awkward to ask it after we'd been talking all that time. Saturday came and Mark turns up about 20 minutes late. He's carrying a rose, presumably to make up for the fact that he's only around 5'2", which had been cleverly omitted in the photos he posted. I'm not usually into short guys, but I humored him and we went and sat in a park in the town center to talk. We talked for about 2 hours about everything and nothing at all, until Mark asked me if he could be so bold as to kiss me. I was flattered but declined. He persisted, saying it was very important, until I lost my temper and asked him why. He explained to me that he suffered from sex-based migraines, as if he was deprived of sexual contact for too long, he would get an excruciating headache that would render him immobile for 48 hours. Although I was naive, I was not stupid enough to believe his nonsense, but I wanted to get home quickly after this meeting had turned sour. I leant over and gave him a quick peck on the cheek and hurried away into the piercing parlor across the road, where the owners knew me and talked with me for an hour until I felt secure enough to get the bus home. I thought this was the end of the encounter and traveled home calmly. My mother and I have never had a strong relationship, and I didn't want to talk to her about it, so when she asked about my day, I just brushed it off and said I met a friend for lunch. After dinner, I went upstairs to my room and pulled out my phone. My stomach dropped. There was a Snapchat notification from M. Sparks. My username must have been on the profile I set up on Tinder. How stupid of me, I think back to now, for I could have avoided a good many unsolicited dick pics otherwise. I gingerly opened it. It was a 10-second video of him lying on his bed at home, looking dazed and confused. The caption, "Look what you do to me." I realized that he was actually faking a migraine and filming it to send to me. I blocked the account and sat watching TV for a while. No harm done, I thought. Wrong again from knowing where I went to school and the fact that I have an unusual spelled first name. A friend request came in from Mark a couple days later. I declined and he sent it again. I was a little weirded out, but he seemed to have mutual friends with me, and from his profile I could learn more about him, i.e. how to avoid him. Big mistake number 2 passed me. The messages started pouring in, starting with, "I really enjoyed today, hope we can see each other soon," and ending up with such gems as, "I need you." I laughed and blocked him again. One day, as I was waiting to get on my bus to go to school, a familiar face smiled at me from the bus stop. It was Mark again, this time with his friends. I wasn't suspicious. My bus stop was opposite his school, and I vaguely knew one of his friends, so I smiled, talked, and made pleasantries until my bus came. This was to be the first of many encounters with Mark, all of which I brushed off as coincidence. He lived and went to school in the same part of town as I did. It was uncommon for me to go a day without seeing someone I knew. The last encounter I had with Mark was on my way to meet a friend. The week before, I had severely twisted my knee playing netball and was struggling to walk from my bus stop to where my friend with the car had arranged to meet me. As I turned the corner, who should appear but Mark, smiling widely and greeting me with a wave. He asked what happened to my leg. I told him it had been a netball injury. He asked where I was going. I told him I was meeting my friend. He asked what time I was meeting her. In about an hour. He said his house was right around the corner, and putting his hand firmly on my lower back, he offered that I could wait there with a cup of tea until my friend came. I tried to protest, saying I would be fine waiting in a cafe, but Mark insisted and half-guided, half-pushed me to his house. When we got in, I asked if I could use the bathroom, to which he said yes and showed me to. I texted my friend after locking myself in there, and said that a guy I vaguely knew had let me wait in his house and could she pick me up from there. I didn't tell her the whole story as I didn't want to worry her and or have her phone my mother, with whom I would have met a worse fate than with Mark. Mark then knocks on the door asking if I was okay. I said yes, but that I'd be out in a couple of minutes, and he agreed to wait downstairs for me. When I let myself out of the bathroom, I walked downstairs to find Mark lying motionless on the floor of the living room kitchen. I panicked, thinking something had happened to him, and went to check his pulse. As I reached down, his hand shot out to feel my breast through my shirt, and he weakly croaked out, "Need release." I battered his hand away and tried to stand up to get him a glass of water. "Need you feel me." His trousers, which I had not looked at until now, were unbuttoned, and he was now stroking himself, eyes now open and locked on me. I freaked out. I ran up the stairs and struggled with the lock on the door, hearing his slow footsteps getting closer. Just as I was opening the door, his voice called out from the other end of the corridor, "Could you at least clean my oven, then?" I whisked the door open and slammed it behind me, almost in tears at both the pain in my knee and the sheer weirdness of the situation. After limping a couple of roads from his house, I rang my friend and said there was nothing to worry about, but could she please hurry? She was right around the corner at this point, and we drove off with me telling her everything in between shaky breaths. The weirdest thing about this story, a couple of days later, I ran into Mark again. He acted like nothing had happened from that day, offered me some gum, and then caught a bus from my bus stop. It was almost as if he didn't remember anything from that day, and I sure as hell wish I didn't. I haven't seen him around in some time, but that could be because he's gone off to university. He's the right age to have. So, Migraine Mark, please let's not ever meet again. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for this Fortnite creepypasta. Today was the day. Today was the last day of Season 4, and so I started the day by getting on Fortnite, and also being really excited for Season 5. So when I was on the battle bus, I decided to land at my favorite spot, Retail Row. I jumped out the bus and I landed at the store that's to the left in retail. I landed on the roof and I jumped down and opened the chest that's in the truck that was behind the store, and I got a gray AR. I went inside the store and I opened the chest in there and I got a blue rocket launcher and some shields. I walked around and I found a green pump. I then saw a player in the store and I shot them in the face with my pump and killed them. Outside, I saw a build fight between two people, and I shot a rocket at both of them, and I killed them both. I then looted the houses in retail, and I got a SCAR, blue tactical, and a drum gun. After that, I went to Dusty, and I killed the player trying to get a pop rock. The circle was closing in on Dusty, so I decided to build a fort there and just wait to kill the other players that were going to pass by. There were now 8 people left, and I saw a player building up to me until I shot a rocket directly at him and killed him. At this point, there was 3 people left, including me, and I saw that the other 2 were in a build fight until one killed the other. Now, it was just the 2 of us. They started sprinting towards me and building up until I sprayed them with my SCAR and killed them, and so I got a dub. After that, I finally got to tier 100, and so I unlocked the Omega skin. At that moment, I could hear my mom crying, so I went downstairs to see what she was crying about. I then looked at my TV, and I saw Trump giving a speech about an asteroid that is going to hit Earth at approximately 1:15 a.m. on Thursday, July 12th, and there was nothing anybody could do about it. They said the size was bigger than the one that hit the dinosaurs. It's now 8:15 p.m. and we only have 5 hours to live, so I'm spending it with my family. And I don't know if anyone's gonna read this or even see this for that matter, but anyways, I guess you could say it's both the end of Season 4 of Fortnite and also the end of the world. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for these 2 true scary horror stories. Our old house was on a corner and in lieu of a backyard had a side yard. With a small deck that wrapped around the back, the dining room had patio doors that led out to the back, and we would have barbecues and such back there. When I was about 14, we only had one desktop computer and one laptop for the family. My brother and I would fight over the desktop, that's where Diablo 2 was installed, so I would use the laptop to write music. On one particular night, my brother had a friend over, and they were downstairs doing whatever, and I was at the dining room table on the laptop. As I was wrapped up in my writing, I didn't pay much attention to my surroundings. I heard a knock on the patio door, which startled me. I looked up, expecting to see my brother or his friend, because the basement had a door that led to the back deck as well. Standing at the door and waving was a person, whose age or sex I couldn't tell, wearing a Halloween pig mask. Thinking it was my brother or his friend, I mouthed, "Good one," and gave the person the finger, and they walked away. As soon as they left, I went downstairs to give them shit, and to my surprise and dismay, they were both sitting on the couch playing PlayStation. They swore up and down it wasn't either of them, and there was no way one of them would have had time to get downstairs and unmask before getting on the couch. And so, to this day, I have no idea who it was that knocked and waved in that pig mask. New Year's Day, 1995. I was in the middle of third year university, and a bunch of friends had come down to visit me and my roommate for the festivities. We were all pretty hungover from drinking the night before, and went out for the usual nice day out, a bit chilly, I don't feel so good, post-greasy breakfast hungover stroll around the neighborhood. Two of these friends were twin brothers. One of them we hung out with all the time. The other we just met for the first time. He was pretty normal the night before, joining in the fun, but on this day, we were all hanging around a local basketball court, shooting hoops with an old basketball we found in the grass. And this twin brother kept following me around all over the place with the creepiest grin I'd ever seen in my life, staring right into the nether regions of my soul the whole time. I'd back away and join the group again, and he'd keep following me around. When we were walking back to the apartment, it was just me and him walking down the sidewalk behind the group, and he moved over in front of me, stared at me with that creepy look again, and fell down to his knees as if to worship me or something. I didn't know what to do. Hey buddy, you alright? We're heading back now, right? And so on. He wouldn't say anything. He'd just be there, on his knees, looking up at me with a clenched face and squinted eyes, as if he were looking directly into the sun or something. Later that day, my roomie said he was tripping balls, so I thought nothing of it and moved on with my life. A few weeks later, we got a phone call from the twin brother we usually hung out with, and it turned out that his twin brother went over to his aunt's place with a knife and stabbed her 14 times. She didn't die, but, still pretty bad. He had even called the police before going, because he knew he was going to do it, but he couldn't stop himself from doing it, because, the voices and so on. The ensuing court case was widely covered in the media, as this was a relatively smaller community where this sort of thing doesn't happen on a regular basis. I was reading one of the articles, and one of the testimonies was that this twin brother was severely schizophrenic and was hearing voices in his head. He believed to his very bones that his aunt was the devil, and that he had been commanded by God to go and kill her. So who was this God that told him to go kill her? Well, as the newspaper article described, it was a guy in a group he hung out with on New Year's Day. It didn't take me long to realize that he was talking about me. This was 22 years ago. I know for a fact it was a mental illness, but just knowing that I had somehow commanded him to go kill his aunt stays with me to this day. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for this Fortnite creepypasta. So, I started my training to kill a demon so I could get out of hell. But before all that, I didn't know where to go, so I just started to walk around. I had no sense of time, and everywhere I went, it looked the exact same. It looked like a volcano everywhere I went. There was fire, lava, and rocks everywhere, not to mention that demons were flying around. I was alone until I met someone. They were an old man, and he said that he would help me. He said that he would train me so that I could kill a demon and get out of hell. We started my training right away, and we started on hand-to-hand combat. I got my ass beat so many times, I lost count, but eventually I beat him, and he said I mastered that part. The next thing he taught me was how to use a sword. Same thing happened. I got my ass beat, but eventually I beat him and I mastered it. The next and final thing he was going to teach me was how to fly. But eventually I mastered that too, and he said my training was complete. He also said that if I lost to the demon, that it would kill me even though I'm already dead, and that the demon would eat my soul. I told the old man that I wouldn't lose, and so I left. I then saw a random demon, and so I flew up to it. I told it that I was going to kill it, but then it just started to laugh. It then used its claws to stab me in the chest, and that was the most painful thing I had ever felt. But then I brought out my sword and cut its hand off. It screamed in agony, which I just laughed too. I then took the claw hand out of my chest, and I stabbed the demon with it, and then breathed fire, but luckily I dodged it in time and punched it square in the face. I then grabbed it by the throat and shoved my sword into its chest, and I then pulled out my sword and chopped its head off. Its body then fell to the ground, and I thought to myself, holy shit, I actually did it. But then, nothing happened. I thought I was supposed to go back to the normal world. Then, all of a sudden, the same guy who I met when I first came to hell suddenly appeared. He said, "Oh, you actually did it. Good job." He said, "You ready to go back to the living realm?" I said, "Fuck yeah." Then it was just a bright white light, and I was then in a casket. I punched the top of the casket, and all of the dirt above and the top of the casket flew in every direction. I then got out, and I was in a cemetery. I looked behind me, and it was a grave. My grave. It said, "Here lies Ryan Matthews, 2002 to 2018. I thought to myself, I'm back, bitches. And then I wondered if Fortnite was still around, because that one match I played had already taken me this far. But my fun isn't over yet. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for one true scary cruise story. When I was around 10 years old, my family took a trip to Egypt. It was a sort of half cruise down the Nile. We would often stay in various spots to check out things, and I don't think we honestly actually traveled on the boat very far. It's where our rooms were, though. My memory is a bit shaky on the finer points, as it was almost 20 years ago, but I do remember lots of the cool things we went to do and see. The Great Pyramids, riding a camel, museums, mummies, etc. But I also remember a lot of the not-so-fun things. Like the tour guide telling my family that my mother and I could never be by ourselves without either our male family members or others from the tour group. They told us that men in the country would see a single woman as someone seeking sex, as they wouldn't travel alone otherwise, or a man offering my father a herd of camels for me, and a bit less for my mother, as she was older. On the top of the ship we were staying at, there was a swimming pool. One morning, as I was using it, sporting a one-piece bathing suit, there was a boat driving past where we were moored, full of men. They were hooting and hollering, applauding and making a general ruckus as they could see me, and I put on theatrics because of it, diving into the pool, strutting around, loving the attention. I cringe at this now. Years later, my mother told me how in a store selling souvenirs on shore, she was groped by the seller. He was placing a necklace on her and gave one of her breasts a really invasive feel. She told my father, and he shrugged it off at the time, and she was still mad at him over it. I understand. I would too. Good job, Dad. Not. And to this day, I remember the one morning my parents went to go watch the sunrise over the desert. It required a very early wake-up, and my brother and I declined to go. So while my parents were out in the desert looking at the sun, my brother still sleeping, I decided to go to the pool. This may have been the same day that I was catcalled, since I was at the pool area by myself, but I'm not 100% sure. I do remember that on the top of the ship, there was a hatch going down one level near the pool. That day I eyed it and decided I had to know where it went. It was easy to open, and I climbed down a short ladder to the deck below. This deck was still open to the outside, with doors leading to compartments and such. The way the boat was moored, we were a couple of ships out from the port. To get off the boat, you had to traverse the other ships in between, but I think this was a normal thing. They were all lined up together, and the travelers would simply disembark by going through the various ships until reaching shore. I went right when I reached the ladder bottom, noticing the major differences from the other areas of the boat I had been on. This area was dirtier, and there were ropes and other junk lying around. I found the kitchen, and I stood a while looking through the window. I remember it seemingly rather gross looking in there, which redoubled my desire to never eat there. My family had already decided not to eat on the boat when a waiter visibly sweated into the soups he served us. I went back towards where the ladder was, then continued a bit to the left. From this vantage, I could see all the ships between ours and the shore. I think there was around 3 to 4 total. I noticed on the far ship that a man was hopping over the railings and coming towards me, one boat at a time. This is versus coming through the main area, which had been set up for the tourists to easily get through all the ships to get to shore. I backed up a bit, back towards the ladder, and as I realized, he was making a beeline towards me. He came over the railing, and I don't remember what exactly he said to me, but it was an introduction in heavily accented English. He asked me if I wanted to party. I was a little confused. In my head, party is when my parents had friends over and lots of music and dancing. I liked parties. Sometimes I got to stay up late and dance too. I don't remember exactly how he convinced me, but I remember standing in the doorway to the cabin, where he was inviting me in. It smelled like smoke, and there was a haze all throughout the room. 3 men in the traditional garb, I don't know what it's called, the long flowing dress-like shirts they wear, with the headgear as well, sitting and smiling at me, waving their hands at me. A hookah nearby them, bottles everywhere. Outside the room, the sun was shining and everything was bright and lit up. And there was an underlying smell I couldn't place, smoke drifting, and the blinds were all shut, giving the room a reddish tinge. Out of everything, that memory is the most vivid. I remember looking up at the smiling mustached man standing in the doorway. He wasn't intimidating, a bit scrawny. He had a good smile that didn't seem off. My little prepubescent brain did light up though. It went, I'm pretty sure this is one of those situations that I'm not supposed to be in, and I really need to go. Like, right the heck now. So, I booked it. I turned tail, skedaddled to the ladder. It wasn't that far. I didn't look back a single time, just got up the ladder as fast as I could and ran back to our room. My brother was in, where he was still sleeping. I told my parents after they returned. They made a complaint, but nothing ever came of it. The room in question was just a crew member's lounge or something. I never saw any of those guys again, and my parents left Egypt disgruntled. I never really thought about it again till a few years later when I was older. Would I be dead now? Sold into a sex ring? Married to some Egyptian guy with a bunch of kids by now? It makes me shudder to even think about it. And I'm very grateful that my school did cover it a little. Not enough, though, about stranger danger. It was enough to make me reject the very friendly guy and realize this was a bad situation for me to be in. With all the weird situations that happened on that trip, and the fascination I apparently held for being so young, I can't help but think that something terrible would have happened if I had gone into that room. Have you ever feared that anything you do, or anywhere you go, has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for this Fortnite creepypasta. One day, I was going to go on Fortnite to see what was in the item shop. It was my birthday recently, so I got 5,000 V-Bucks. What was on the item shop was something strange. I don't know if it was an accident by the staff, but it was a skin called Immortal Raptor. It was like the raptor skin, just with bloodshot eyes and what looked like a bunch of open wounds on its body. I should note that my friends warned me about the immortal raptor and said that whoever had the skin would have a person come into their house and kill them and put their calling card, at least that's what they called it, on the body, which was a costume of the immortal raptor. I told them that I didn't believe them because I would want to rub it in their faces that nothing happened. I played a game and landed in Dusty Divot. When there were 10 people left, my inputs on my keyboard didn't seem to go through. Instead, my character spray painted a bunch of numbers. I froze when I realized that it was my IP address and my parents were not home, since they were out drinking with my friend's parents. I called my friends and said to come over here since there might have been a man coming to get me. They came over and had brought some weapons. My friend Aaron brought his hockey stick, my friend Josh brought a baseball bat, and my friend Mac had brought his dad's handgun. We locked all the doors and windows and called the police. About 10 seconds after we called the police, we heard glass breaking behind us. When I turned around, I saw what looked like the immortal raptor. He was wearing his calling card. The person went inside my bedroom and Mac shot him. It didn't do much as I quickly realized why the skin was called the immortal raptor. The person got up and pulled out a knife and said, "Did you like the skin?" Mac shot him twice and it made the man fall back, and Aaron and Josh beat him up with the weapons they had. The man cut Josh in the leg, and when he did, I saw the man's arm was covered in scars, like the open wounds on the immortal raptor skin. We quickly ran after Mac unloaded all of his bullets on the man. The police arrived and 4 showed up. 2 went inside and the other 2 looked around the house, and the 2 inside never came out, but it looked like they called for backup since 4 police cars pulled up with sirens on it. The 2 outside and the 16 policemen that were in the cars went inside and never went out. We all screamed, "The guy just killed 20 people!" But then more policemen came, and this time they were outside the house and was cautious of going in since they were afraid of losing more men. A body was tossed through the window, dressed in the immortal raptor costume, and we all ran as the police started shooting the windows, and we managed to make it to the police department, and since we had a hidden camera installed on our front lawn, I saw the whole thing. More bodies were tossed out the windows, but they did not have the calling card on them. I thought that he must have had only one costume on him since he was expecting 1 person instead of 20. The man finally came out and shot and stabbed the policeman, as well as absorbing all the shots being thrown at him. At this point there was SWAT coming in, but the immortal raptor took off before they could get there. There was also SWAT at the police department, and they transported us and our parents to a plane that took us to Vancouver. We were placed under witness protection, and all cases about the immortal raptor have grown cold ever since that encounter. I always think about what happened, and I also think about how the man will come back, better prepared. Have you ever feared that anything you do, or anywhere you go, has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for one true scary road trip story. Spring break, 1997. I was heading out to Houston from Lubbock and looking forward to a nice week of doing nothing. With a few stops, the drive should take about 8.5 to 9 hours. The plan was to stop in Austin for the night at a good friend's house and head out to Houston in the morning. For the record, I'm driving an 85 Sentra hatchback. No AC, no cruise control, thanks Dad. Due to work commitments, I couldn't leave Lubbock until about 6 p.m. I stopped at a friend's house for a quick bite before hitting the road. It's now 7 p.m. The drive itself was very uneventful until I get to Austin. About 12:30 a.m., I reach Austin and find a bank of payphones. Before the era of everyone has a cell phone, I called him to say I'm not tired. Really, gonna make the short drive to Houston. He says, "Are you sure? It's pretty late, man." Me, "Yeah, I'm good. Call you in the morning when I'm in Houston." I hang up and fill up the tank before heading out again. It's now 1 a.m. At 2:30 a.m. I reach Brenham and can barely keep my eyes open. I do every trick in the book. Loud music, windows open, slapping face, punching myself. Nothing's working. Just past Brenham on 290 is a combination levee/bridge highway designed to keep the freeway high and dry during big floods. The last thing I remember was closing my eyes and opening them suddenly to see my car plunging down the levee with me inside. I must have been doing 60 to 70 miles per hour when I went downhill. Luckily, the high grass kept me from either overturning/nailing the bottom of the levee. So I stopped about 15 feet from the bottom of the levee. It's the middle of night, and no one can see my car down the embankment. No cell phone, no witness, car won't start. Fuck. After a quick check on myself, I get out of the car and stumble out the driver's side door. I start climbing up the levee to flag down someone to help. Yeah, right, people are just gonna stop when they see some Mexican-looking fellow waving his arms in the middle of nowhere at 2:45 a.m.? Finally, an 18-wheeler stops and I borrow his cell phone. I call my dad, who's unsure of what to do. Thanks, Pop. Then I call a wrecker to pull my car out. The trucker offers to wait until the wrecker arrives, but I get finally creeped out just sitting there, so I say, "Yeah, I'm good. I'll wait by the side of the road." The trucker leaves and I'm all alone again. After a few minutes, I realize that I'll probably be waiting for an hour for the wrecker, so I decide to get back in my car and see if I can throw it in reverse. Not sure if I had an angel on my shoulder, but the car fired right up. As I threw it into reverse, it truly felt like a Christmas miracle. All the way up the embankment, I drove backwards and made it to the top by the side of the freeway. Got out and checked around. Wheels, okay. Body damage, nothing too noticeable. Engine, looks like the underneath of a lawnmower, but it all looks okay. Belts are still belting, let's go. I put it in first gear and I hear a wobble from the wheels. Not sure what it is, but nothing is gonna stop me from making it to Houston. Damn it, my top speed after the accident was about 40 miles per hour. I reached my parents' house at about 5 a.m. Tired, sore, and still a bit in shock, I told my parents what happened before I collapsed in my bed. After I woke up sometime around noon, I went to survey the damage. I had completely stripped 2 of the 4 lugs of the right wheel and 1 lug of the left wheel. I'm damn lucky that 1 or both wheels didn't fly off the car after my accident. I also realized that if I had gone 15 seconds later, my car would probably have been upside down in the creek. So yes, never sleep during a long road trip. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for this creepypasta. I didn't even fight the charges. I admitted to the murders and even made sure I committed them in a state with the death penalty in effect. Why run the risk of a painful death in prison when you can have the state put you down quick on their dime? I was guilty, I was sentenced to death, and I was happy. They took me into the execution chamber. I didn't know if they still called it that, but I'd been thinking and hoping for a while that that would be my final sight. It was clean and sterile, white tile walls, and floors to enhance that notion. As they strapped me onto the slab, I looked at the window across from me and saw only myself, the doctor, and the executioner. One-way mirror, I guessed. I was hoping to see the families all together one more time since the trial, but I guess I could settle for them seeing me. Straps tightened, and they stuck the needle in. They asked me if I had any last words. It's been fun. I scanned across the window. I'll see your kids soon. Canister 1 emptied its contents into my bloodstream. It's supposed to be sodium thiopental to drop me unconscious. They must have messed up the dosage though, because I only got too drowsy before the next injection. Pancuronium bromide to cause the paralysis. Now that one, they got right. I froze in place, taking in only the shallowest of breaths. Then was supposed to come the potassium chloride to stop the heart, but I don't know what they injected me with instead. A burning pain flooded through my body, from my arm to my heart to everywhere else in an instant. I felt fire behind my eyes and in my gut. I would have screamed in agony if not for the paralysis. A minute of this goes by that feel like 100. Then I heard my heart rate monitor flatline. I was legally dead, but it sure as hell didn't feel like it. They unstrapped me, threw me on a gurney, and rolled me to the morgue, burning from the inside out. There they slapped me carelessly on a slab and locked me in a refrigeration cell. Now, with my skin freezing and insides boiling, I'm wishing I fought for my life imprisonment, or that one of the families had shot me dead in that courthouse. Please, God, just let me take back what I've done, because I've been in here for weeks now, and I'm just praying they do an autopsy before I'm buried in this hell. Have you ever feared that anything you do, or anywhere you go, has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for this fortnight creepypasta. I thought to myself, what do I do now? Then I thought to go see my family. I walked around the cemetery, looking at all the graves, until I found the entrance and I walked out. I realized that I was in my town cemetery, so luckily I knew my way home. As I was walking, I thought to myself, how long has it been? I had no sense of time when I was in hell. I could have been dead for days, weeks, months, or even years. I finally saw my neighborhood, and I walked until I got to my house. It looked like no one was home, and I looked under the doormat on the porch where they keep a spare key. I opened my front door, and I walked in. I went all through my house, and no one was home. At that moment, I realized that I still had my sword. I tested my strength and punched a hole straight through the wall. I also tested if I could still fly, which I could. Then, I thought, I can't be stopped. All of a sudden, I heard a car pull into my driveway, and I looked out the window, and it was my mom. I then walked out my front door and started casually walking out of my driveway. My mom got out of her car and said, "Ryan, is that you?" I said, "Hey, Mom, what's the date?" She then said, But, but you're dead and it's July 2018. I thought to myself, it's only been like a month? Oh well. I then went up to my mom and I got out my sword and I then chopped her head off. I then flew away. While I was flying, I started to laugh. Then I thought, what should I do next? Ah, let's kill some cops. I'm gonna head to the police department and kill every cop there. This is going to be fun. Just like that one match of Fortnite that had taken me this far. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for one true scary Craigslist story. To Scott Davis, the ad seemed too good to be true. A steady $300 a week and a place to live, all for watching a secluded farm in southeastern Ohio. The job of a lifetime. Davis, 48, had recently broken up with his girlfriend and was looking for a new start in life when he saw the ad on Craigslist in 2011. The ad mentioned that over 100 applicants had responded to the job posting, so Davis could barely contain his excitement when he got a call telling him that he was one of the job finalists. All he had to do now was meet his employer and check out the farm. After a final interview in a local restaurant, Davis climbed into the back of a white Buick, while his new employer, a heavy-set man named Jack, squeezed into the front seat. A burly teenager, who Jack introduced as his nephew, was behind the wheel. As they drove, the road took them farther and farther away from civilization. Soon, they were surrounded by dense woodland, and not long after, the Buick creaked to a stop on a secluded stretch of the dirt road. Jack told Davis that they left some equipment just down the hill, so Davis hopped out to help them carry it up the car. That's what he was there for. Jack led the way, but they somehow got turned around in the thick underbrush, and Davis found himself walking with Jack and the young man right behind him. Davis heard the click of a gun hammer. As he spun around toward the sound, a bullet shattered his elbow. He stumbled into the woods. Behind him, Jack cursed and fired round after round at his back. They all missed, and Davis spent his next hours creeping through the woods like a hunted animal, blood soaking his right side, never sure if Jack or his silent accomplice would be around the next bend. Long after sunset, Davis finally found his way to a rural house where he pleaded with the owners to call the police. Over the next few days, the horrifying reality of the situation came to light. Jack was actually a man named Richard Beasley, who used his Craigslist ad to lure men into the woods to kill them. His nephew was 16-year-old Brogan Rafferty. Together, the two had already killed 3 men and buried their bodies in shallow graves in the woods. In 2013, Beasley was sentenced to death, and Brogan Rafferty was sentenced to life in prison. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for this Fortnite creepypasta. I was finally able to play Season 5 of Fortnite. I was on vacation ever since it first came out, and I wasn't able to play it. Once I got home, I turned on my Xbox and booted up Fortnite immediately. I bought the Battle Pass, and I was now jumping out of the Battle Bus. I decided to land Lazy Links because it was new, and I wanted to see what it looked like. The thing I wanted to do most, though, was drive a golf cart. I landed, and luckily, I found a green drum gun, and I killed 2 people that were near me. I was running around when I finally saw it. A cart. I hopped in and started to drive it. This was the best, I thought. I was driving it, drifting, just overall messing around until I started to drive away from Lazy Links. I was still learning the controls and everything, and just driving around until I put my controller down to get a drink of water. After I set my controller down, the cart didn't stop. It didn't stop even though I wasn't using my controller. I then picked my controller back up and I tried to stop it, but it didn't work. I thought it was a glitch until I saw something on the screen of my TV. It looked like me, but older. It looked like I was in a hospital with a woman and a baby. It then changed to me looking a lot older with some random dude driving off in a car while I wrapped my arm around the same woman I saw before, but older. I then realized that this might actually be my future. It then changed to me in a cemetery burying someone. I looked at the grave and it said, Robert Downing. That's the name of my dad. It then changed to the same thing, except this time it was my mom. At this point, I was beyond freaked out. I didn't even know how any of this was possible. Then the screen changed to another grave, and it said, Here lies Tyler Downing, March 3rd, 2001 to September 4th, 2052. It then cut back to my character in the cart, but this time it wasn't moving. I didn't even know what to think. I still don't even know what to think. But it's been 3 days since then, and I've been really freaked out. But I have a theory that in some way or somehow that it showed me my future and the day that I will die. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for this GTA 5 creepypasta. I never finished GTA 5. I liked playing it, but something happened. My name is Alexander, but everyone calls me Alex. I am now in a wheelchair due to my missing legs, but I wasn't at the time of the event I'm going to tell you about. Back then, my legs were there, and they worked perfectly fine. I used to play GTA 5 uncontrollably when it first came out, just like every other teenager. A lot of my friends finished the game within weeks, but I wasn't the competitive type. I liked moving around the free world, exploring the big map of GTA 5. Also, I didn't always have as much time to play as my friends did. My grandmother was in a wheelchair and often needed a lot of help. She had a stroke, and she couldn't move anything besides her hand. She had a bell attached to her hand, which she used when she needed help with anything. She lived with my father, my mother, and I. My parents helped her with most things, but I liked to help her as well. Whenever she rang the bell, I was there within seconds. One day, I was home alone with my grandmother. She watched TV in the living room, and I was getting bored of playing GTA. I played a few missions and drove around randomly, shooting people for some time. With nothing else to do, I continued playing, thinking I would keep playing till my parents came home. I believe it was around 8 p.m. It was winter at the time, so it was pretty dark outside. Being killed by the police in GTA wasn't so bad, and that's how my shootings and killings of random people always ended. I only lost $5, but I had already finished the first heist mission, so that amount of money was not much to me. Respawning at the hospital, I started looking for a car. No one likes driving around shitty cars, but unfortunately, I died near Trevor's home, so I respawned at the hospital on the countryside. As many of you GTA players know, this is not where you find a car to brag about, so I ended up with an old car. That type of car doesn't have much relevance to the story though, so I'll move on. I was driving around in the mountains of Tongva Hills when I spotted a woman. She was no typical woman of the game, and I'm sure I'd never seen her before. She was way more realistic than anything else in GTA 5. I mean, really realistic. Her face was so detailed it looked like photography. Her face was pale, and her eyes were big and black. Her hair was long, and it was pitch black. It looked as if it had never been washed. She was wearing a long red dress with marks of dirt in it. It was not a modern dress, though, more like a dress from the 50s or 60s. She didn't really belong in the hills, and well, she didn't really belong in the game. She was walking up the hill with her head looking down in the ground. At first, she triggered my curiosity, so I drove closer. I shouldn't have driven closer, though. I wasn't freaked out till she raised her head and said, "Hello." Both her voice and her face were way too realistic for this game. It sounded like her voice was coming from all over my room, and not my speakers. It wasn't an electronic voice or anything like what you hear in games. It wasn't possible to point out where exactly her voice was coming from. She looked like nothing I had ever seen in a game, and she sounded like nothing I had ever heard before. She was so realistic. Her grin gave me the chills and made me feel really uncomfortable. I reacted to this by hitting her with my car, which knocked her over. I guess trying to kill it is a pretty common solution for everything in GTA. She'd been knocked over by my car, so I drove over her legs while she laid on the ground. I shouldn't have done that. I really shouldn't have done that. Her haunting screams were unbearable. It sounded nothing like any of the typical screams from GTA or any game whatsoever. Her screams were so terrifying that I cringed my toes and my heart started beating way faster. Her scream sounded more like it was coming from everywhere in my room than coming from my speakers. I really shouldn't have driven over her legs. She kept screaming in agony, and the screams turned louder and louder. I was frozen with fear. I wanted to turn off the game, but I couldn't move. It was then the screaming stopped. Everything went quiet. She looked up, and she looked at me. I'm not talking about my GTA character. She looked through the screen right at me. Her words almost gave me a heart attack. "Now why did you have to do that, Alex?" I really shouldn't have driven over her legs. She started crawling towards me, while staring right into my eyes with a horrific grin. Her grin was still wide, reaching from ear to ear. Her eyes were bigger and blacker than before, and her mouth had opened with blood coming out of it. "Alex," she said in a deep voice, with the blood from her mouth making bubbles. She crawled faster with determination. She was heading for me, not my GTA character. She was heading right towards the screen, and she knew my name. I could hear the bones in her legs crack as she was towing her crushed legs across the ground. With terror, I unplugged my console and my TV, and my room turned pitch black. I quickly turned on the lights in my room. It was quiet. The only sound I could hear was the wind blowing outside my window. I kept listening. I noticed that I was sweating rapidly. I shouldn't have driven over her legs. I almost jumped when I heard my grandmother ringing her bell. Eased to get out of my room, I walked slowly towards the living room, where my grandmother watched TV. For every step I took, I kept listening for any abnormal sounds. My grandmother then rang her bell again. When I reached the living room, I stopped in the doorway. My grandmother's wheelchair was standing in front of the TV, with its back towards me. "Grandma, did you call?" I said in a hoarse voice. The wheelchair started turning slowly towards me. I then noticed that my grandmother's gray hair was replaced by black and what looked like unwashed hair. While the wheelchair was turning towards me, I could hear the haunting sounds of crushed legs being dragged over the floor from the wheelchair. The pale woman in the wheelchair looked at me with big black eyes and a grin full of blood and said, "Why did you do that, Alex?" I really shouldn't have driven over her legs. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready. Have you ever feared that anything you do or anywhere you go has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for 2 true scary school lockdown stories. It happened in 2014 in November. I'm a senior in high school and graduating soon this year. I remember feeling dreadful and not wanting to go to school because somehow I knew that something bad was going to happen. After arguing with myself whether or not to go to school and texting my friends, I decided to go to my mom and tell her I won't be going to school since we will only watch movies and eat free food given by the teachers. I finally convinced her and went to sleep. 2 of my friends also told me that they're not going to school. Then I received a text message from my dad and friends that came from the school. It says, "The school is on lockdown. All students and staff are to remain inside the class. The police are on their way. A student is allegedly threatening all the staff with a weapon in hand." This is normal for me. The school lockdowns when there's trouble. It happened twice in 5 years. At first, my school wasn't as bad as it is right now. We had a school council, and we look up to them, and they regulate school rules and are always the ones to stop the fights or anything that will harm the students. That was in 2011 and 2012. When the seniors, who were all part of the student council, graduated, everything went bad. As in bad, my school was suddenly reported for drug deals, fights inside the school, my school wanting to fight another school, and bomb threats. I can recall events where police was escorting a student a year below me. I was in year 10. The next day, my friends who were at school told me what happened. Apparently, a guy who's 6 foot tall went on a rampage when a teacher told him off for not doing his work and not graduating. The creepy thing, though, was that he's in the same year as me. I often see him in school, and he looks harmless. He broke the school's windows in the 700 block, went to the cooking class and grabbed a kitchen knife as a weapon, and threatened everyone that he will kill them. They called the police and made the students go to their classes and remain in class until the police got into the school. Fortunately, they were brave students and they knew how to defend themselves, and they decided to imprison the student into a closet taller than him. A student kicked the knife away from his hand, and they punched him into the closet and locked it until the police arrived. I don't know what happened after that. There were rumors that he was put in jail, suspended, expelled, and went to another school. It was a good thing I wasn't there. Many times my instincts had saved me from danger, and this is one of those times that I won't forget. To Lucky, who's as tall as bamboo, I hope we never, ever meet again. I was in my American history class at the time when the shooting happened. The shooting took place in the main office of my school, and my class was to the far left of the school. It was during lunch hour, but my class had already come back from lunch. At the time of the shooting, I had my earbuds in because we were working on a project for the class. My friend bumped me and told me we were in a code red and that we had to do all the protocol stuff. Lights off, no one side of the window on the door, everyone sitting on the ground, no talking, no cell phones. The no talking rule always gets broken because people want to hear what other people think about what's going on. The year the shooting happened, I was a freshman. The shooter was a senior and had been suspended due to doing donuts in the parking lot. He left school, did some K2, which police reports said, came back with his father's loaded handgun, and shot the vice principal and principal. The principal survived, the VP did not. The student left the building and drove somewhere, parked, and took his own life. The sad thing was that the VP had a son that taught at our school. I didn't have him as a teacher, but he took a few weeks off after the shooting. And all the while, I was working on my American history project, not knowing what happened until someone announced on the intercom what had happened. After a couple of hours of being in a code red, police started to escort classrooms outside the building. And so, it was a rough next couple of days for some. Have you ever feared that anything you do, or anywhere you go, has a darker side to it? Well, get ready for this Fortnite creepypasta. I was flying in the air when I finally saw it. The police station. I flew down to the ground, and so I landed right in front of it. And luckily, no one saw. I landed in the front, and so I just walked in. At the front desk, there was a guy, and he said, "How can I help you, sir?" I said, "You can go and die." And so I brought up my sword, and I jammed it into his face, and I killed him instantly. The cops that were walking around saw it, and they said, "What the fuck?" They pulled out their guns and said, "Freeze, put your hands up, you're under arrest." I just laughed. I said, "Bring it on." They shot, and I dodged all the bullets with ease. I walked up to one, picked them up by the throat, and I crushed their throat. I then threw my sword into one that was behind me, and it went through their heart. Two ran up to me, and I kicked one in the head, and I snapped their neck. The other one pulled out their gun, and they tried to shoot me, but again, I dodged it, and I snuck up behind them and punched them so hard that my fist went through their chest. After I killed that cop, I picked up his gun, and I reloaded it. I then started to walk through the police station and kill everybody that was still alive. I walked into an office, and I saw a little girl for whatever reason. I realized that it must be one of the cop's daughter. I gave her a false sense of hope, and I said, "It's okay, I'm a good guy." She walked towards me, and that's when I brought out my sword and chopped her head off. I walked out, laughing. I saw another cop, and I shot him in the head. And then, out of nowhere, 6 more showed up, but immediately, I shot them all in the head. Then, SWAT showed up, and there was about 20 of them. I found an M16, and I easily took care of them all. I picked off all the other cops that I found, and then I headed for the chief of police's office. I walked in, and I saw him. I said, "Time for you to die, old man." He said, "Who the hell are you?" I said, "My name's Ryan. I'm the kid who killed all those people in the school." He said, But how? You're dead." I then said, "I'm back, that's how." I pulled out my sword and threw it into his skull. I walked out of the police station, having killed every single person in there. I then thought, who should I kill next? The mayor. Let's do this. I started to walk towards City Hall to kill everybody that was in there. I then again thought back to Fortnite, and how it's taken me this far, and how it will bring me even further on my killing spree that will continue for a very, very long time.